On a quiet hilltop, the horn antenna still points at the empty sky. 60 years ago, this rusting funnel of steel overheard the birth of the universe. This was the laboratory that invented the modern world, the transistor, the laser, the code humming inside your phone, and the country that let it exist would decide it had grown far too powerful to live. You're watching Doom Clock, where we take apart the giants that built the future and were then taken apart themselves, right down to the phone call that quietly ended an empire. If that's your kind of story, subscribe. First, a phone company builds itself a cathedral of pure science. In 1925, the American phone giant folded its scattered engineers into a single company and named it Bell Labs. Its first president, Frank Jewett, a physicist, was handed a mandate no business had ever dared write down: invent the future and take your time. The arrangement was strange. A regulated monopoly, guaranteed its profits by the government, chose to pour a slice of every telephone bill into research that might not pay off for decades. Western Electric built the machines. Bell Labs would imagine them. The 1920s. Radio was new, the telephone was crossing a continent, and the future still felt like something you could build with enough clever people crowded into one building. Then the discoveries began, and for decades they simply did not stop. They were racing to fix a crisis. As America grew, the phone network was drowning in its own wires. Every new phone line meant more copper, more poles, more manual switchboards. The system was reaching its physical limit, just as a brilliant mathematician proved that every message, whether voice, text, or image, could be reduced to simple ones and zeros. The transistor's first job was humble. It shrank the radio from a piece of furniture into something a teenager could slip into a pocket. Almost every device that ever got smaller owes its life to that first fragile switch. One of those minds belonged to Claude Shannon. In 1948, he published a paper that quietly split history in two. He proved any message, a voice, a photo, a whole symphony could become one currency, the bit, a single choice between 1 and 0. Every digital thing you own descends from it. Then Bell Labs reached space. On July 10, 1962, it launched Telstar, the first active communications satellite, a beach ball of circuitry lofted into orbit. 2 weeks later, it carried the first live television pictures across the Atlantic. For the first time, two continents watched the same moment together as it happened. In 1958, two Bell scientists, Charles Townes and Arthur Shawlow, patented the idea of the laser. At the time, nobody quite knew what it was for. Today, that same beam scans the barcode on your groceries, carries the internet through glass fibers, and performs surgery on the human eye. For a generation, the future seemed to arrive on schedule, and it seemed to arrive from a single hedge-lined campus in New Jersey. Every year brought another impossible thing, and the impossible things kept working. But every one of those miracles was paid for the same way, by a monopoly the government had merely chosen to tolerate. The better Bell Labs became, the more a single company seemed to privately own the future itself. That was a debt the country would one day come to collect. By its peak, the scoreboard read like fiction. Some 33,000 patents, roughly one for every working day of its existence, 5 Turing Awards for inventing how computers think, and 10 Nobel Prizes, every one for work done on these quiet New Jersey grounds. For a while it looked permanent, the smartest building in the world, humming behind a hedge in suburban New Jersey, funded forever by the ordinary phone sitting in your kitchen. Behind the breakthroughs were people who never became famous. In 1969, two quiet programmers, Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie, started tinkering on a spare machine down the hall. They built an operating system they called Unix, and a language they called C. Today, almost every phone, server, and car on Earth still quietly runs on what those two men wrote. So why would a phone company fund physics that wouldn't sell a thing for 30 years? Because it could. A regulated monopoly earned a guaranteed return, and a small slice of every bill flowed into the labs. Patience was the real product. History loves a lone genius, so the transistor is still often credited to William Shockley. The documented record is different. On December 23, 1947, it was John Bardeen and Walter Brattain who made the device actually work. Shockley was not even in the room, and later admitted his pride was stung by that. So how did a sliver of germanium replace a glass vacuum tube? The first transistor was crude, a small block with 2 gold points pressed against its surface. A tiny current controlled a much larger current flowing out. Amplification, with no heat. In 1964, 2 astronomers aimed that horn antenna at the sky. Arno Penzias adjusted the dish and heard a faint hiss he could not remove. He and Robert Wilson scrubbed it, even evicted nesting pigeons, but the hiss stayed. It was the afterglow of the Big Bang. By accident, they had caught the universe's first light. The signal they caught was over 13 billion years old, older than the Earth, older than the Sun. A telephone company, chasing nothing more than a cleaner long-distance line, had stumbled into the first echo of creation. None of this happened by accident. At Bell Labs, the hallways were built long on purpose, so a physicist walking to lunch was forced to pass a chemist, a mathematician, a metallurgist. You could chase one idea for years with nothing to show. Failure was simply the price of aiming that high. By the 1970s, the same government that had allowed the monopoly began to see it as a threat. The most admired company in America was quietly becoming the most investigated one. The reckoning was almost here. Then the government decided that one company should not own the future. In 1974, the Justice Department sued to break up the Bell system, and the case filled the courtroom of Judge Harold Green. But the decision fell to a single man, Chairman Charles Brown. In January 1982, convinced he would otherwise lose everything, Brown signed the papers that dismantled the largest company on Earth. The decision that ended the Bell system was not shouted in a courtroom. It was offered, almost casually, down a telephone line to a government lawyer who was away on vacation. The government's case was never really about telephones. It was about power. Upstart rivals like MCI complained that Bell used its monopoly over the wires to strangle them before they could grow. A company that owned the lines, the equipment, and the research had simply become too complete to allow. On January 1st, 1984, the Bell system was carved into pieces. AT&T kept the labs but lost its monopoly. In 1996, they were spun off into Lucent, whose stock crashed. The breakup had a precise shape. AT&T kept its long-distance lines and Bell Labs, but the local networks were sliced into 7 independent regional companies, nicknamed the Baby Bells. One empire that had answered every phone in America became 8 competing pieces overnight. For the labs, the logic that had funded everything was gone forever. There was no longer a guaranteed river of money flowing in from every telephone. Now there was fast-paced market competition and demanding shareholders who expected immediate returns this quarter, not foundational physics discoveries 30 years from now. For a moment in the late 90s, the spin-off looked like a triumph. Lucent became one of the most widely held stocks in America. Then the telecom bubble burst, and the same company that had lit up the whole market suddenly went dark. The numbers are hard to believe now. In a single fiscal year, Lucent lost $16.2 billion. Over 12 months, it cut 68,000 jobs, nearly half its people, and the stock that once traded near $84 fell toward the price of a phone call. What was left was passed from owner to owner. In 2006, Lucent merged with the French firm Alcatel. A decade later, in 2016, the Finnish company Nokia bought the whole thing. The laboratory that once invented the American century now answered to a phone maker in Espoo. The empire is gone, its ghosts are not. Today, Nokia owns what is left of Bell Labs, still headquartered in Murray Hill. But the great glass palace at Holmdel sat abandoned for years, its parking lots cracking apart, its endless corridors gone silent. Look at the phone in your hand. The transistors that run it were invented here. The laser reading its data was invented here. The Unix bones of its software, the information theory in every byte it sends, the satellite links it leans on, all of it invented here. You are holding the ghost of Bell Labs. The building that made all of it is quiet now. But its inventions are louder than ever, humming inside every screen, every call, every search, in the pocket of nearly every person alive. And the people scattered. They carried the idea factory model west, seeding Silicon Valley labs, university departments, and 100 startups. No single place ever concentrated that much genius again. Perhaps no monopoly will ever be allowed to try. If you worked there, you remember what it felt like. You could knock on any door in that building, and the smartest person in your field would look up and actually help you. You were paid, simply, to be curious. Nowhere has quite replaced it since. The Glass Palace has a second life now, filled with offices and shops. But drive the back roads of Holmdel, and you can still find it. The horn antenna, rusting on its hill, the instrument that once overheard the birth of the universe, still pointed at a sky that no longer answers. Here is the part we usually get wrong. Bell Labs did not fall because it stopped inventing. It invented right up until the end. It fell because the thing that funded genius, a permanent monopoly, was exactly the thing a free country could never allow to keep existing. If your family worked at Bell Labs, tell us which building you were in and what you were chasing there. Leave it in the comments. Next, another giant that invented the future and then lost it. The rise and fall of Kodak.